In this tutorial, we're going to give you a brief overview of the steps to create the model and toolpaths to make the teddy bear that you can see on the screen here. Now there is a companion tutorial that covers this example in much more detail, so you may want to watch this example first to get an overview of the process, and then if you're interested in following along, you can watch the detailed tutorial to get a better explanation of all the steps. So let's just go and close this down. Then we'll go and open an existing file, and from the teddy bear project folder we're going to open the teddy bear vector file and then press open. And you can see here that we have a simple set of vectors that we've created in the software, and we're going to use these with a modeling function called the create shape. So let's go over to the 2D view control. We're going to tile the windows, so that way I can see my 2D view in the left hand side and I can see the 3D view in the right hand side. We need to come over to the modeling tab at the bottom of my interface here, and I'm going to create the bear model working from the bottom up. So to help me organise my component tree, I'm going to rename this level by right mouse clicking. I'm going to rename that level, and I'm going to call this level base. And so the first shape that I'm going to create will sit within the base level. We're going to take this vector here. This is the first shape we're going to create, and this is going to be the face of the bear. With that vector selected, let's come over into the modeling tools. We're going to use the first icon to create shape from vectors. And so this function will allow me to choose vectors from the 2D view and assign a profile to them in order for us to create a 3D shape. So for the face, we've got the face vector selected. I'm going to go with a curved profile, so this one here. And then for the angle, I could type in a value, or I could just look at moving that using the slider. For this example, I'm going to type in an actual value, 30 degrees, and we'll space to enter that in. I'm going to go with a base height of 0. The final height we'll set to no limit. We'll have no tilt on this. We're going to set this component's combine mode to add, and then we're going to go and call that face. You can press apply, and then we can close that down. And so if we look in the 3D view, we can see that it's applied that angle and the profile to the vector that I had selected, and it's created this shape that represents the face of my bear here. So let's put that back in Z. The next set of components I'd like to create, I'd like to represent the face details. So we're going to look at the eyes, the snout, the nose, and the mouth area. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new level. So I'm going to right mouse click on the base level and use the option to insert a new level, and then I'm going to right mouse click again and we'll rename that level, and we're going to call this level details. And so this level is going to add on top of the base level, and the components that I create within this level will all add on top of the base level. So if that level selected in bold, well, every time I create a component now, it's going to be added to this level. So let's go back into the create shape from vectors form here. So I'm going to quickly work our way through each of these vectors, assigning a curved profile along with an angle to create all of the different shapes that form the face details. So we're going to start by selecting the snout vector here. I'm going to type in a value of 35 in here, no base height, no limit, and we're going to call this one snout. We'll press apply. Okay, and then I have the option to use this button here to start a new component, and if I select that, it will save what we just created, and it enables me to create a new component without having to come out of the form and then go back in. Okay, so then I'm going to go and select the nose here. So with that vector selected, we're going to come up to the angle, give that a bigger angle this time, make that 60, base height 0, final height no limit, no tilt. This is going to add on top of the snout that we just created below it, and we're going to call this nose, and to press apply. And then again we'll go over here, use the option to start a new component. I can select more than one vector if I wanted to. So for the eyes, I'm going to select this vector here. I'll hold down shift, and that will enable me to select another vector. With those both selected, we're going to go into the angle and we'll go with an angle of 40 degrees. Again, no base height, no limit. We're going to set that to add, so it's going to add on top of the level below it, and we're going to call that eyes. Press apply, and again we'll go and start a new component. We'll select this vector here that represents the mouth area. I'm going to go with an angle of 50 here, base height 0, final height no limit, no tilt on this. We're going to set that to add, so it's going to add on top of our snout area here. We'll call that one mouth. Press apply, and then we can take a look at that in the 3D view. And now actually in this case I don't want that mouth area to raise or add on top of the snout area. I'd rather have that recessing into the snout shape. So let's just change the combine mode of that to subtract. Okay, so we can see now that that's subtracting that shape there, and I'm happy with that. So I'm happy with all of those face details. We could go ahead and press close. And we can see that all of those components have been added into the details level within our component tree. Now I want to create the last few components that represent the ears here. And I'd like our ears to blend in to the face shape. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert a new level. So right mouse click, use the option to insert a new level, right mouse click again, and then we're going to rename that level, and we're going to call this level ears. And what I'm going to do here now is right click again. I'm going to use the combine mode, and we're going to set the combine mode of that level to merge. And so setting that to merge means that anything that I create within this level will merge with the levels that are below. So let's go back to the create shape form up here, and then we're going to go and select this vector here that represents the left outer ear. I'm going to hold down shift and select this vector here that represents the right outer ear, and we'll put in an angle of 35 degrees in here, no base height, no limit, no tilt. We're going to call that ear outer. Press apply, and we can see in the 3D view that those ears are blending in to the face shape. So let's go and start a new component. I'm going to select this vector here, hold down shift and select this vector here, and we're going to create the inner ear components now. Again, we're going to go with the same angle here, 35 degrees, no base height, final height, no limit, no tilt in this case. However, what I would like to do is make these a negative shape, so I'm going to set them to subtract, and then we're going to call that component ear inner. We could then go ahead and press apply, and then we could close that down, maximize the 3D view. And so you can see that we've created all the components that we need. So let's just take a moment to look at the component tree. I'm just going to switch off the ears and switch off the details for the time being. And so we started off with the base level, where we created our base shape. So it's currently adding to nothing, so it's just adding to the modelling plane. We then created a new level, which was the details level, which is set to add. So anything that we create within this level is going to add onto that base level where we have the face inside. And then we created another level called the ears, and the ears level is set to merge, and so anything that we create within this level is going to blend into the levels below it, and so we're getting this nice appearance of the ears blending into the face shape. And the way that we organise our components and alter the combined modes of the levels and the components is what forms this composite model that we can see in the 3D view. And it's this model that we're going to machine. Now before we create the toolpath, we need to scale the Z height of the model. So let's come up to this option up here to scale Z height of model. We can see the current height is displayed here. If I wanted to, I could set in an exact height by using this button here, and then I could just type in a value. For instance, I could put in 0.4 if I wanted to reduce that and press apply. In this case, I just want to go ahead with 0.6, press apply. You can see that that's been updated. So I'm going to close that down and OK that form. Another thing that we need to do is create a vector that represents the outline of our teddy bear model in order for us to govern the shape that the toolpath is going to stay within. So let's go over to the 2D view control. We're going to use the option to tile windows vertically. So let's go and select the vectors that represent the outline of our teddy bear model. So we've got this one here. Now hold down Shift and select this one. Still holding Shift, I'm going to select this one here. I'm then going to right mouse click, and then I'm going to use this option here to copy to layer. And I'm going to use the option to create a new layer. I'm just going to leave the layer name set to layer 2. I'm going to make that visible, and I'm going to make it the active layer and then press OK. If we go to the Layers tab, I'm going to switch off layer 1, and we can see that layer 2 is displayed, and we've got the copy of those vectors that we just copied over. Now with those vectors selected, I'm going to go into the Drawing tab, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this option over here to weld selected vectors, and that's going to create a single vector that represents the silhouette of the part. So now I have my vector boundary. I can use this option here to switch over to the Toolpaths tab. You can see that's minimized the Design tab on the left, and it's opened up the Toolpaths tab on the right hand side. And so now we're going to set up our material so that we can relate how we set this up in the software to how we will physically set this up on our machine. And so to do that, we're going to go over to the material setup and use this set button here. So the first thing we're going to do is set our Z0. I'm going to Z0 that off the top of the block. The material thickness that I'm working with is 3/4 of an inch. My XY datum position is going to be in the lower left hand corner. Then we move on to the model position in material. So I'm going to set it down slightly in the material so that there's a small gap above the model. I'm just going to type in a value here of 0.03. So that means we'll have a gap above of 0.03. Then we've got our model thickness, which is 0.6. Then we're going to have extra stock below that model of 0.12 inches. We'll then move on and check the rapid gaps above material, the home and start positions, and ensure that they're all safe. And then once we're happy with all of those, we could go ahead and press OK. Now if you plan to actually machine the example shown in this tutorial, then it's very important that you calculate all toolpaths using parameters and settings that are safe and appropriate for your particular machine, the tooling that you have available, and the material that you are using. So we'll go ahead now and press OK here. So now we're ready with that vector selected, we can go over and calculate the toolpaths to cut this out on our CNC. So the first toolpath we're going to run is the 3D Roughen toolpath. And so what this does, it allows us to hog out the majority of the material with a bigger tool to make it safe for us to come back with a smaller tool in order for us to finish that with a finishing toolpath. The first thing we need to do is assign a tool to this toolpath, so I'm going to use the select option here, and that's going to open up my tool database. I can select a tool. I'm going to choose a 1/4 inch end mill here. I'll go with some of the settings that are in here and just press OK. For the machine limit boundary, we're going to use that vector that we selected. I'm going to apply a small offset in this case of 0.18, and that's just so that it forces the tool a little bit past the edge of my vector to ensure that it cuts down the side of my part. We then move on to the machine allowance. For this, I'm just going to put in a very small value of 0.03 just to leave a little bit of thickness on the part. The roughing strategy, we're going to Z-level and raster that in X. And then I can move down, give that toolpath a name, we'll call that 3D Roughing Bear, and then I could go ahead and press calculate. And then we can preview that toolpath, and so we can see what that toolpath will look like when we come to machine that into our material. And so we're getting a simulation into a piece of virtual material of how this would look using the settings that we put in the roughing toolpath form. And so we can see that the roughing toolpath has hogged out a lot of the material and left us with this stepped part. And then what we can do now is go and run a finishing toolpath on this. So we can close that down. The same vector selected, let's go in and create a 3D finishing toolpath. And for this I'm going to use an 1/8 inch ball nose. I can see that's already selected. If it wasn't selected, then I'd use select and open up the tool database to select that tool. Machine limit boundary, again we're going to go with the selected vector this time. For the boundary offset, I'm just going to go a little bit past the part, so I'm going to put in a value of 0.08. We're going to raster this. A raster angle is 0 so that it's cut parallel to the x-axis, and then I'm going to go and call that 3D finish bare. Press calculate, and that's just going to work that out for me. And then we can preview that and see an animation of how that will look when we cut that out on our machine based on the settings that we put in that finishing toolpath form. Okay, so you can see it's just taking a little bit longer because it's a bit more detailed this time. And so if we take a look at that, we can maximise the 3D view, and we can see we've got a nice looking part there, so I'm happy with that. So let's go and cut that out of the material block. So we'll use the close option here. We're going to go to view, and then we'll tile our windows vertically, put that back in Z with that vector selected. Let's go over to the toolpath operations, and we're going to use the profile toolpath this time. So the cut depth for this, we're going to make that 3/4 of an inch, so we're going to cut all the way through the material. We're going to use a 1/4 inch end mill to cut this out, so I'll select that one there, press OK. Machine vectors, going to make sure we select the outside option. I'd like to add tabs to my toolpath so that I can safely and securely hold my part into the block of material. So I'm going to use the Add Tabs to Toolpath option. I could specify length and thickness if I wanted to. And I could use the option here to edit tabs. I'm going to go the constant number of 3. We'll add tabs, and we can see they've been added to our 2D view. I could move them around if I wanted to. I could delete them, put them in place, move them again, until I'm happy with the positioning of those tabs. We could close that down. Come down, we'll call that profile bare, press calculate, you can see that preview there, and then if we preview that toolpath, and then if we maximise the 3D view, we can see what our finished part looks like. So I'm happy with the amount of detail it's picked up. You can see my tabs there in that preview. And so at this stage, if I am happy with this, I could go ahead and save out those toolpaths and take them over to my CNC machine, in which I'd then go and run that file. So let's just quickly run through an example of how to save a toolpath. So I'll just close this down. I like to save out my 3D roughing toolpath, so with that selected, let's go over to Save Toolpath. Toolpaths to be saved, I can see that my roughing toolpath is in that list there, so I'm happy with that. I then go and select an appropriate post-processor from the list. Okay, so I'm going to go with this one, so you choose one that's suitable for your machine. I'm going to go with this one, press Save Toolpath, save that out, and then it's this file that I'd take over to my CNC machine and run that on the machine. Okay, so then you go ahead and do that for the rest of those, saving them out to the appropriate post-processor, and then you can go and take those files over to your machine and cut the teddy bear model out. And so that completes this tutorial. Now, as I said at the start, there is a companion tutorial which covers this example in much more detail if you wanted to follow along to create your own version of the teddy bear.